Hey guys, and welcome to the channel. I'm super excited to be joined by Gill Gross, and we're going to talk about the US Open, the tournament, which I think a lot of people were extremely excited to watch. There was a huge fever around it. That people were saying Novak on 20, Roger on 20, Rafa on 20. It seems like probably only one of the big three is going to be playing in it, but it's going to be a fantastic tournament nonetheless, I think, given some of the other players coming through. But first of all, before we get into that, Gill, how are you doing?
I'm good. Great to be back with you, Faizan.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Of course, you're probably wondering why Gill's not in his normal Monday match analysis setting. He's out and about doing, of course, his now tennis channel gigs, right? Which is amazing. So congrats on that. And hopefully you continue to get bigger and bigger gigs, mate. Really amazing. And of course, I'm sure you guys have checked out Gill's channel and also Three a Tennis podcast, which is a tennis channel podcast as well with Amy Lundy and Joel Drucker, which is a really good watch. So do check that out. And it's about the big three. So how can you not check it out? Let's get into the US Open. In fact, because I just talked about the big three, let's touch upon the two most notable omissions. I think let's start with my favorite player, who I'm happy to say is my favorite player, but I try to be as unbiased as possible. Rafa Nadal. I was really upset when he pulled out, and I know obviously there's a reason for it, and you wouldn't pull out for no reason. But I just thought, despite the lack of match practice going into it, there was this, I think, maybe a little bit of a fan fever in my head, telling me, you know what, he's won there 4 times. It plays kind of similar to Clay. It's quite slow in recent years, and I thought, you know what, Novak hasn't, losing to Zverev in the Olympics, and actually, who knows how he'll be mentally going into it. I thought Nadal might have a relatively good chance. And it was like this fairy tale kind of, story in my head playing out, thinking, you know what, he could probably do it. He can maybe do it. But obviously, it's not to be, you won't even have a chance of doing it. He's had that very unique foot disease, I think, isn't it, that he's had from a very young age that I think he was told by doctors he would never play. Actually, he wouldn't be able to play at the top level, but has managed to do it. So that's, to be honest, that is a classic Rafa story, though, isn't it? Someone telling him he can't do something and he does it. Just they grit through it. So classic Rafa. But yeah, huge miss. And I don't know. I mean, what do you think of him pulling out? I know you've touched upon it as well in your channels as well, but not just what do you think about him pulling out, but what do you think it means for him, not just for this year, because he's not going to play the rest of the year at all, but also going forward as well, because I think there's been, including myself, there's now kind of a feeling that, well, hold on, it looks like the big three might be starting to kind of now dissemble.
Right. Well, certainly it's been a bad year for Federer and Nadal's health. I think, you could go back to 2016 and the same thing kind of happened where they were both really struggling at the same exact time. And then they both came back and simultaneously had an incredibly successful 2017. As for Rafa at the US Open, I agreed with you until I saw him in DC. I thought, okay, the US Open, he's going to be one of the contenders and he's going to be right there, possibly in Djokovic's way, and he'll try his best. But then when I saw him in DC, I thought, okay, he better get better because he's not playing well enough right now. No need to panic because he can, I know how he can sometimes get better and better with more and more match play. But then it was, okay, I'm pulling out of Canada. I'm pulling out of Cincinnati. Well, now the match play is gone. I figured if he plays the US Open, he doesn't have much of a chance. And then on top of that, there's no reason to play tennis after the US Open. It's much better, just with the way the schedule is structured with the 4 majors and then, none after the US Open. It's much better to just prepare for Australia at that point, even though it's so far away. And especially because he has so little luck at the tour finals. So, he's not going to play after the US Open. I don't think with the state of his foot that he would have had much of a chance at the US Open had he played. So, I mean, I just think wise decision, no-brainer decision. And I think if you're a Rafa fan, the one thing that you can take solace in is he's dealt with this injury before, which means he knows a lot about it, and he should know exactly what it's going to take for him to get to a point where he can take the court again at 100%.
I'm going to take your word for that, Gill, that he's going to be back at 100%. The best Rafa ever, Rafa 15.0 or
I don't
whatever
know
it is.
about that.
Version 15. But yeah, I agree with you. I think the Washington showing was really worrying. And then I just kept on saying to myself, it's fine. It's the foot. It's the foot, like that's all it is. He'll get better. And then he pulled out Cincinnati, and I'm thinking that's not great, but maybe he's just going to be practicing. He's played so many times on these courts. Maybe he'll just kind of, hopefully get an easy draw. But yeah, just wasn't to be. But I'm hoping that 2022. But these guys get older and older, which means that they're going to get more and more niggles. And I think there will just come a time where we will have to accept the fact that, unfortunately, this generation, which we've been very lucky to witness, is probably not what it once was, and they'll come to the end of it. But I mean, Roger Federer is another example of someone who's struggling, but in probably a different way and maybe a more serious way, because, I mean, normally I wouldn't say, oh, he might retire, but he could retire, because I think from what it looks like, the knee is so bad that he's having to have a third surgery on it. And on top of that, the statement he sent out was one which you don't normally associate with Roger. Normally it's, I'm just going to recover. I want to be back. This time it wasn't. It was, I'm going to try my best to come back onto court. Not I will be back on court to try and play competitive tennis. So that definitely stood out to me as, he's in the back of his mind. There is a part of him that's thinking, I may not actually play again. As heartbreaking as that is for, I don't think anyone needs to be a Roger fan to want to see him back. I think you just need to be a tennis fan to want him to come back and play and actually be able to play a competitive tournament, hopefully a slam, ideally, where he just has one more run and you just think, well, okay, this is his best chance. And I guess so, one last hurrah, I guess you want to say. I know yourself and I think it was George Rock on the 3 Tennis podcast mentioned that maybe if he does manage to come back fit, he might do a kind of tour of some of the tournaments, and it's like a farewell tour, and see how that goes, which will be it'll be quite unique. So interesting to see how that goes as well if it does happen. What are your thoughts? I mean, what's your instincts telling you about Roger? Do you think we're going to see him back on court? It's tough to say, of course, but
yeah.
I mean, what's your kind of gut feeling telling you? And how do you think, even if he does come back onto court, are we going to see him be competitive? Or will it be a one last hurrah?
It seems like the knee has never recovered at any point throughout this entire process. And he has been he's been pretty private, and Novak has been private as well with things that have happened with his injuries in the past. Roger has also been very private about specifically what is happening in terms of, okay, is this a different operation that they're going to try and see if it works because the previous 2 didn't? Is it more invasive than the previous 2 operations? And these things would kind of tell us more about the situation he's in. But I think Roger needs to prepare for all possibilities right now because he doesn't know if it's going to work. And that's just, I think, sometimes how these surgeries are. Andy did the same thing. Murray, when he got hip resurfacing surgery, he didn't say, okay, guys, I'll be back. He said, well, we need to see if this works and what I feel like after the surgery. And then fortunately, he felt well enough to come back and play more. And I think it's going to be the same thing with Roger. As for the farewell tour, I didn't say this on the podcast, but I said this on my mailbag on my own channel earlier this week. I don't think he would do a farewell tour on the regular ATP tour when, playing slams and all that. I think what he would probably do is he'd probably do it for charity. He's done this in the past where he's gone to South America and he's gone to South Africa. He's done these things. The thing is, Roger's unique because he doesn't need to do the farewell tour with the pressure of like trying to win Wimbledon as well. He doesn't need that. He'll just do a farewell tour and say bye to the fans, I think, on his own terms to support his charities. For me, that's a no-brainer. So that's how, if I were to guess how it would play out, I think that would be my guess.
Yeah, so it sounds like various kind of exhibition tours, which I know himself and Rafa have done a lot of in the past, haven't they? I think they played on what was it? They played on a yacht, wasn't it? In the middle of the ocean or something. Well, I think it was in. Yeah, well,
it's
maybe
possible.
it wasn't that. They definitely played on a helipad in Dubai. I don't know whether I've just made that one up. The one in the middle of the ocean.
Sounds familiar. It kind of sounds familiar.
But they've done some crazy like exhibition charity matches, which has been really cool. Like they played in Mexico, didn't they, as well? Didn't they?
Rafa has an advantage on yachts. He's experienced.
He does love a yacht, doesn't he, Rafa? He does.
Yeah.
He does.
And then they did the Battle of the Surfaces.
Yeah, exactly. So they've done lots, haven't they? So I can imagine, and the fans love it. To be fair, and I think maybe you're right. There'll be more of an exhibition type thing where it's for charity and it's a bit of fun. And who knows, Roger can maybe rope in some of the old stars. And I remember they did it with Agassi and Sampras and Nadal and Federer, and they loved that with the mics on. That was great. I remember watching that, thinking it was fantastic. It was great to watch. On to other missions, and obviously it's not just Rafa and Roger, because Dominic Thiem, I mean, he has had an absolutely dreadful 2021. I think it's probably one of the worst years I can remember him having in a very, very long time. Obviously, just horrific form, then injuries plagued him, and it looked like, okay, he'd entered himself into the US Open, and I'm thinking, well, but when's he going to play? Because he doesn't look like he's playing in Washington, doesn't look like he's going to play in Toronto, Cincinnati, he didn't look like he was going to play in. And I was thinking, well, what we're going to see is he's going to come in seeded, and is he just going to weigh down one of the sides because he's going to be an early exit, because he's going to be coming cold, really? And he just eventually just said, look, it's not good enough at the moment, my wrist. And he's pulled out of not just US Open, but again, like the rest, he's pulled out of the rest of the year. I mean, it's like 2021 is being cursed for him. And what do you think about 2022? I mean, are we going to see the Dominic Thiem who realistically, right? I mean, we're going to talk about Zverev and Tsitsipas and Medvedev in a bit, but before it was Thiem was the guy who, this is going to be the next guy coming through. He was making finals, right? Consistently at Grand Slams against your Djokovic's, your Nadal's as well. And you're thinking this guy can play on all surfaces, maybe not grass, but he was making finals at Australia, US Open, obviously he won last year, and at Roland Garros. And you're thinking this guy's got all the tools to be one of the next number one, I think is what they were saying. Obviously fallen off a little cliff because of the injury and then just had a horrific year. My question to you is, can he recover? And are we going to see it? Can he come back to that form and be a force to be reckoned with?
The break could help him mentally. That's the positive side, is that he was experiencing burnout, and if he's back to missing the game because he can't play, even if he wants to right now, that could be a good remedy for someone who has kind of lost the drive or the passion or the fire, which is what Dominic Thiem was kind of struggling with. Just resetting his mind and making new goals and just getting that intensity back up. So the break could help him in that respect. But I also think he was at such high level that it would be, we shouldn't assume that is going to be easy to reobtain. It could really go both ways. I could see the break helping him mentally, and then he gets back to where he was, or I could see that being kind of his peak. It wouldn't be the first time we could say, well, it was one guy. He got to a peak level at 27 years old, had an injury in 2021, and he was never quite the same after that. And when I say he was never quite the same, there's no doubt that he's going to be a great player again and that he'll be back in the top 10. But he was really on a trajectory, as you said, to become world number one, to add on to that US Open title and win more majors. And could this derail his career in a way where he never gets back to that? I think that is unfortunately a possibility.
Yeah, agreed. I think he struggled, didn't he? I think with no crowd, which was interesting. He complained about the bubbles as well, saying that it was very mentally draining. And some of the players have obviously found it very difficult. And it's hard for me to sit here and say that it's not tough, because I'm sure it has been. But I think that
I don't
probably
think that was it,
compounded it.
though.
No?
No, I thought he was okay with the bubbles and the no crowd. He didn't like it, and I know he was
Yeah.
public not liking it, and that's what you're referring to.
Yeah.
But I thought winning the US Open was really what ended up doing him in mentally,
Yeah.
because he had a massive hangover effect
Mm.
from basically achieving his life's goal.
Yeah.
And I think it can be hard for a lot of players. I mean, usually it's not as bad as what Thiem experienced, but it can be very hard for players to remotivate themselves and find new purpose as a player once they've achieved that goal.
Yeah, agreed. I think maybe we're too used, aren't we, to seeing Djokovic, Federer, and Nadal. They win a slam, and it's just like, oh, it's okay, let's keep going. But most most champions aren't like that. When they win the first one, you said they have to reassess. And the good example in actually another sport is Tyson Fury in boxing. When he won the world title, he then suffered depression after, because he didn't know. He was like, I've done it. What do I do now?
Exactly.
He's literally like, what do I do now? Like, I've achieved everything, beat the man. What do I do? And it's almost like, oh, my life kind of is done, it's complete. And you're only 7. So like, I think he's the same age actually as Dominic Thiem at the time. So it's tough, I think, being an elite athlete. And I guess their whole life, he's probably grown up thinking, I'm going to win a Grand Slam. And then when you win it, it's like, okay, I need to now completely rejig myself and motivate myself to say, I'm going to win multiple. I'm going to be the guy to be number one. So I get that. I think I really do hope the break does him some good, because Dominic Thiem at his highest level is only good for tennis. He's rock and roll. He's all action. He's aggressive. And I think it's a really attractive style, for me anyway, playing style to watch, that I think gets the crowd going for sure. And especially as Rafa comes to the end of his career, I feel like Dominic Thiem gives you that same kind of rock and roll effect. For sure. I guess then, not talking about the omissions and talking more about the guys that are going to be in the draw, and maybe some guys in form. Let's first of all start off with Zverev. I mean, Zverev had a fantastic Olympics, we know. Hasn't really had the yips that we were worried about serving-wise for quite a few months now. I know you touched upon, obviously, him not remodeling his action, and he hasn't done it, to be fair, so it could come back at some point and he just gets the yips again, but hasn't happened yet, so hopefully it just doesn't happen again. That's probably what he's hoping for. And obviously at the moment he's missed Toronto because he had a break after the Olympics, won the Olympic gold, and now he's made the final of Cincinnati, just beating Tsitsipas in 3 sets. And he has been hitting the ball really, really crisply. Like, it's almost like after the Olympics, he looks like a player who's just brimming with confidence, and is completely different. His approach, his game is still very similar, of course, but before, when maybe he'd be tentative to then take the more high-risk approach, he's just backing himself completely. And I feel like he has this... Before, it was almost a hesitancy in his play at times to then say, you know what, I'm going to just force the opponent into an error rather than being proactive when he has the weapons to do so. And now it's more, I'm going to be the proactive one. He's been coming to the net a lot more as well, which I felt like before he would be quite passive at the baseline and just kind of let the point run through. And in general, I've just been really impressed with him. I think his backhand on the line especially has been phenomenal. A shot that has definitely the last few months has just become really an incredible shot, one that I've been so impressed with. And we're seeing less miscues, less double faults. I think he'd only dropped 1 service game the whole of the tournament until yesterday. I mean, what do you think in terms of his prospects for the US Open and the effect that the gold medals had? Surely he's a contender going into it.
Yeah, he's been playing incredibly, as you've observed. I still have some underlying concerns about whether or not he's mentally ready to do that and to go all the way and to win a big match at the tail end of a major against a top player and one of his chief rivals. That is That is what I question. And I don't even question that he can build a lead in one of those matches or come back in one of those matches. But can he close, and can he weather the storm when things start to go wrong? And can he maintain his confidence, right? So when it comes to the double faulting, it took him out of Wimbledon against Felix Auger-Aliassime when Felix didn't even play really a great match, and Zverev still lost. And when these things happen, it's not going to be every match. We know that Sasha can win a Masters title, go a full 5 matches and win an Olympic gold and do these things, but then at a slam, when it's the first set and he double faults once, serving out the set, is that one double fault? Is that going to turn into 2? Is that going to turn into 3? That's the question. It's not, is what tennis is he capable of, but when he faces adversity, is that confidence that we see him have? How brittle and fragile is that confidence? What's it going to take for that to break? I saw in the Tsitsipas match in the semifinal, I saw him go to some bad habits. And, I don't know if that's because he was physically struggling or because that confidence was kind of shattered a little bit, or not shattered. That's a little too dramatic, but if the confidence wavered a little bit. So that's kind of the question, right? But can he continue that bold and aggressive hitting from the baseline? And can it just be the norm? Like, will it just be present and never go away? And I still have my doubts. I'm not, he could prove me wrong, but I still have my doubts about that.
Not sold on him yet, Gill, but I'm sure Zverev will be tweeting you and telling you that he's ready. He's ready. But no, I agree with you. It's interesting, right? Because the double fault thing is something that I just every time I watch him play, and it's funny. I think he served 2 double faults against Tsitsipas, and each time he served the double fault, and I just thought, and I was doing a watch along at the time, and I was commentating, and I was saying, oh, here's a double fault. Is it going to be 2? Is he going to get the serve yips? And it feels like it could come at any moment. And he didn't. It didn't happen. And I was thinking, okay, fine. So the more he avoids it, the more I think, okay, maybe it's going to get out of his system, but you just never know. And I agree with you. I think he seems to have the overall game to be able to succeed at this level. I think he's got one of the most complete games in terms of all-round capabilities than pretty much most people on the tour. I think he's in the top 0.5% of the tour in terms of his overall ability, because he doesn't really have a perceived weakness, I think, of his game, a glaring one. It's more just the mental aspect of him, which is he matured enough? Has he matured enough even to, as you said, a good example, I guess, is Roland Garros, right? The semi-final against the same opponent, Tsitsipas, where he came back from 2 sets to love down. It made it, took it to a 5th, and then the 5th set, he had the momentum going into it, and Tsitsipas came back and took it and kind of took charge of that. So he had an opportunity as well. I think it was the quarterfinals of the Australian Open against Djokovic, where he was playing really well for the first kind of half of that, and then he just let it slip. And I remember his brother was doing the commentary for Eurosport, and he was like, "Yeah, he had a chance there. He's a bit frustrated," and you can tell he, as a brother, he was like, "Man, like he had a chance there." So I actually really want to do. I feel like he is someone who lacked, as you said, the confidence, and it seems like he's got it now. As you said, it's just a case of how strong is that confidence after the Olympic gold, and how is it going to fare when he does. Eventually at the US Open, he will be in a position where he's up against it. How will he react? So it'll be interesting one to look out for. Let's talk about, I guess, his fallen opponent then, Stefanos Tsitsipas. I want to ask you actually about something before we talk about his US Open prospects. And it's the, people calling him Textabas and, all of that because of the other allegations.
I haven't seen that one.
Have you not? I've seen it come from the forums on Facebook, and so it's so funny. But obviously, I think from what I know, and I've seen a picture of, I don't know if it's 100% true, but there was a picture of him and his dad in the locker room because after was it in Canada, so in Toronto and in Cincinnati, basically after every set, pretty much, if he can, he will ask anyways and say, look, I need an emergency toilet break. He goes, does an outfit change, goes to the bathroom, takes his bag with him, which according to people, they're saying that his phone is in there, right? So Zverev yesterday, the reason why it's come about is because Zverev was saying to the umpire, look, like he did it at Roland Garros and he does it at every tournament. And he was saying, look, you know, he basically was asking someone to check if he was in the toilet, which is quite funny. And the umpire's going, you know, I'm just following protocol, which, you know, which he would do. And then the camera panned to Stefanos Tsitsipas' dad, and Stefanos Tsitsipas' dad is on his phone. Looks like he's texting. And so there's this image in people's head, which is Stefanos Tsitsipas sitting on the toilet on his phone, you know, talking to his dad, like, what do I do, Dad? What do I do? I'm going to sit down. And his dad going, you know, you should do X, Y, Z, like coaching him basically, which obviously is cheating, right? So I guess my first thing is it's tough to say whether exactly it is happening or not. We don't know. It's just assumptions really. But in terms of the rules, I guess more, and the maybe attitude of Tsitsipas, considering that he wants to have on-court coaching. I mean, is that a little bit of a concern if you're a Tsitsipas fan or just a tennis fan to say, is Tsitsipas a little bit mentally weak potentially?
I mean, yeah, I don't know about that, but I think what is clear is he is willing to go right up to the edge of what the rules allow to try to win a tennis match. It doesn't make him a bad person. Now you can decide if as a fan you're okay with that, or you can decide as a fan that you're not okay with that and dislike him. Either one is fine. But what is clear from watching Tsitsipas is if there is a way that he can increase his chances of winning a match within the rules, he is going to do it. He does not care. In that way, he does not adhere to like regular kind of tennis etiquette stuff. His father takes a coaching violation warning almost every match. There's no real punishment for that. So every single match, basically, Apostolos will get a warning, which means that a coaching occurred. And Steph doesn't care because there's no penalty in terms of losing the match. He will disrupt his opponent's rhythm with strategic, toilet breaks. I think that there's no doubt about that. He will change rackets. He will change his shoes at questionable times. He does all of these things. So again, he will use the set of rules in tennis and he will use them to the max. He does not break the rules. Some people will say he's cheating. According to the rules, a lot of the time he's not.
Yeah. I like to call it the dark arts. If anyone reads Harry Potter, it's like the dark arts that he uses, isn't it? Which is it's in the rules, but it's kind of what's the word? It's the kind of the things that most players won't dare to do, but he is happy to kind of tread the line.
Yeah. So look, I don't know if he's texting on the toilet or not. I don't know. But I think players should not be allowed to bring. So players change their clothes, and that's why their clothes are in the bag. That's why they bring their bags off the court. That's typical. And then they go into the bathroom, and it should be standard procedure. And by the way, a lines person is supposed to chaperone them to the bathroom to make sure that at that time they are following the rules. But the chaperone is obviously not going to go into the bathroom. So it is a very simple fix, and it should be part of the rules to make sure that players are not bringing their phones with them into the bathroom. And that should be a rule. And I don't think it is, although I'm not 1,000% sure if that is regulated or not. And
I agree.
Answer your question there. But hopefully
no. It is a pretty open-ended question just to see your thoughts on it. But yeah, I agree. It's interesting that I think from what it sounds like, again, I can't say I'm 1,000% sure on it, that the mobiles are obviously then shouldn't be allowed in, but there's no strict rule to say that you can't specifically take your phone into the toilet. So whether he's taking it in or not, I don't know. But it was just, it was a funny coincidence that happened in the match, and Zverev obviously complaining. And actually, I think when Tsitsipas came back onto court, if I'm not mistaken, when I was watching, he actually got booed by the crowd because it'd taken him 10 minutes to come back onto court. And he'd done that in all the previous matches in this swing so far. After the first set, it's taken him about 10 minutes to come back onto court. So it's an interesting one. And obviously, for example, a good example is Rafa taking his time on serving, etc. as well, really pushing the shot clock. So everyone has their own little intricacies to their game, which I get, but it's just. It was just interesting to get your thoughts on it because there's been a lot of talk on it. But in terms of his chances, I guess, for the US Open, someone who has probably been a little bit more accustomed to, I say the clay, but he's had a lot of success on the hard courts, really, to be fair, as well in his career. Yes, I think against Zverev, kind of up and down match. Zverev played really well, and then kind of he just wasn't able to get into it. The backhand slice, I think, still needs a lot of improvement. I feel like it's not quite there yet. He tried to utilize it against Zverev to mix it up, and I guess not give Zverev any pace on that backhand side, and it backfired because he wasn't really.
It's not good. It's not good.
I just don't feel like it's a good enough shot right now to use consistently as a game plan against someone like Zverev, and Zverev just punished it. He was literally getting down on a knee and just short backswing and just pinging backhands down the line from that slice. And Tsitsipas is like, what am I supposed to do? And you're just looking at him thinking, well, your slice is not good enough right now to do it. So either you need to go try and find an angle on the topspin backhand, or you need to mix it up and not just hit that slice, which is at the moment pretty pedestrian, really, is probably the word to use for it. But in terms of his chances for the US Open, he's been serving quite well, to be fair to him, and the forehand we know is a weapon. What do you see as his chances going into that tournament?
He's played some really good tennis. Unfortunately, when he is not on clay, there's a factor when it comes to the draw where if he faces a big server, that could give him a lot of trouble based on his return issues. And that's something you can't say about Zverev. It doesn't matter really. There's not a style of opponent that Zverev could draw in the 4 rounds where you'd be like, ooh, this could be a problem. But with Tsitsipas, there's that thing where it's like, he doesn't want to see Opelka or Raonic or these guys can take him out, which is a little bit concerning. But other than that, I think he's playing very good tennis. I think that mentally there's still maturing to do. I've been saying this now for 2 years. I'm ready to stop saying it, but it's still the case where he is not always composed. He blows a lot of leads. I think that's part of it with him. And these things are going to be tough to overcome. But in terms of level, I think that him and Zverev are really right up there. And they, I think, are major contenders to Djokovic and Medvedev, who are probably one tier above in terms of how much they should be favorited to win the title.
Yeah, I agree. I think Tsitsipas is an interesting one, isn't he? I think he, as you said, the return is such a talking point in the sense that it just has to improve. And I feel like watching him against Zverev, and Zverev is a very good server, to be fair. But again, right? I mean, these guys, Zverev and Tsitsipas, are supposed to be on the same level. They're supposed to be competing for who's the best, right? In each matchup, it should be 50-50 at the moment. That's the kind of level I feel like they're at the moment in terms of ability-wise. But Tsitsipas is, return-wise, his return is so much worse than Alexander Zverev's. There is a huge gap at the moment. And Tsitsipas, when he does make returns, half the time it's just short. It's just he's trying to get the ball back in. And there's no real proactiveness to say, I'm going to try and get on the front foot or at least get to a neutral position after my return. It's more, let's just try and make him play an extra shot, and I'm going to try and survive here because at the moment I'm just going to concede that his serve is too good. So it is a worrying sign. I think towards the back end of that match it got better, but I feel like that's natural given the more that you see someone serve, the more you get used to it, the more then your muscle memory and the way you move is just more accustomed to it. But losing to Opelka, recently as well, I think it was in Canada, wasn't it? In the semi-final was a big blow, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, I just think that is definitely.
If I could just interrupt with that match, he didn't have much of a chance there because his return of serve wasn't giving him much of a chance because Opelka was basically serving to his serve volleying to his backhand. And, Tsitsipas, his backhand return, it's not really it's gonna struggle with that. I mean, when you have Opelka's serve and he's coming in behind it, it really felt like Steph didn't have the skills that he needed to come through that match.
Yeah, agreed. And no, please feel free to interrupt me whenever. Like, genuinely, don't worry at all. But yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's very hard to disagree. So let's see how he does. Daniil Medvedev, though, I mean, he has been in really good form, obviously winning the Masters tournament in Canada. Did actually recently lose to Rublev, which will be a little bit of a disappointment to him because he's got such a dominant record against Andrey Rublev. But I was quite surprised he even made the semi-finals. I know you said in your draw as well that you thought he'd probably suffer from a bit of a hangover and you wouldn't be surprised if he went early in the Cincinnati Masters. But managed to make the semis, took Rublev to 3 sets. Rublev, I think, was pretty impressive, I think, for the most part. And obviously there's a funny moment where Medvedev, well, say funny, but collided into the cameraman. And at first it was a bit like, oh, this is kind of funny. And then after he was like, I'm going to see you guys because my hand, like, it could be injured. And I was like, oh, okay. And he stands so far back, Medvedev, that he is the octopus man for sure. And he just manages to get most things back. But what do you think? I mean, he going into it, I feel like below Djokovic, I feel like Medvedev and maybe Zverev, and I feel like Tsitsipas is slightly below them. And you've got kind of the rest, and we'll talk about maybe Rublev and the others. But Medvedev is someone who I think a lot of people are looking to be the big challenge. Obviously, looked really good. He served so well in Canada. And to be fair, he carried that on for the most part in Cincinnati. And yes, he hasn't won. He hasn't gone to the final, but it was still a good run. What were we thinking for him? I mean, is this going to be, again, a tournament where at the US Open it's slightly slower? Will it potentially suit his game? Or do you think actually going into it and given his form, he may actually find trouble there? Because it's difficult sometimes to get a gauge of where he's at going into a slam.
The way he moves on a hard court, I think as long as it's a hard court, it's okay for him, no matter fast, slow. Do I prefer the conditions in Australia a little bit when it comes to Medvedev? I do. But I still think that for me, he's a massive contender. I don't read much into the Rublev loss, honestly. The camera incident derailed him. And look, this is one of his weaknesses. He is easily rattled and can go off the rails. But when he's not rattled, he's very mentally tough. And I think he's mentally tougher than Zverev and Tsitsipas, in his regular state when he's very confident. And his serving, his returning, his consistency, his patience, all of that coming together. I mean, it is still an incredible, unique, and scary combination that he brings to the court that Zverev can sort of match in a lot of ways. But I do think Medvedev is a little bit steadier in his implementation of his defense and his consistency. And then also, I just think he's a little bit weirder to play for everyone with the ball that he plays, which is so flat and stays so low and is so deep in the court with such consistency. I think that's a dimension that Zverev doesn't have, where Zverev's ball is a lot more normal for people. And when people play Medvedev, it's the ball skidding more, and it's a little bit like, what the heck is this? There's a weirdness factor there. So I'm very high on Medvedev with the tennis that he's played coming in. I'm very high.
Yeah, he's very unorthodox, isn't he? I think is what everyone said when he started making his moves really in the ATP tour. But one thing that you pointed out, which I thought was a really good point, and obviously watching him in Toronto, was the returning was fantastic, wasn't it? I mean, against Opelka as well, made Opelka look ordinary, which is very, very rare. I think it's the first match I think it's only the second time, and I think it's something like 5-6 years that Opelka hasn't served more than 10 aces, and both times were against Medvedev. So it shows how good a returner he is. He has a very similar way of returning to Nadal in terms of the depth, but the way that he actually returns in terms of his reach is very different. Nadal, is reliant on his athleticism to kind of get round. Medvedev is more, he has good movement, but his reach is so much superior to Nadal's that he has those long levers as well to help. And he finds these angles that genuinely you just think, how has he done that? And the depth, I think, as well, that he finds, which you mentioned previously as well, on the returns, considering how flat he hits over the net, is just it's astounding, really. And it's something that obviously works for him. And I don't think it's something you could teach because it's so hard to execute as Medvedev does, but it's incredible to watch. And I think if he's serving well, like he has been, and he's returning the way that he has been, that's kind of half the battle done or more. Then it's okay. Well, as you said, it's the mental aspect, not getting rattled and being able to close out big points. So I just feel like he's got a lot going for him. So looking forward to seeing him. I know we're kind of short on time, so I don't want to go on too much about a lot of the players. So I'm just going to finish off with asking you some questions on the tournament. I know it's still early days, so I'm not going to take this as gospel as your picks and kind of dark horses, etc. Because of course, we've still got a little bit of time. I think a week or so until the tournament starts. But if I had to press you in terms of let's say two dark horses going into the Grand Slam at the US Open, given obviously the swing and just kind of form going into it and other factors, who do you pick and why?
Well, I guess there's two types of dark horses. There's like the seeded dark horse that like, and then there's like the unseeded dark horse where like, their expectations are lower.
I'll give you one of each.
Yeah, sure. I'd say the seeded dark horses are Pablo Carreño Busta and Karen Khachanov, who both had wonderful Olympics, but really it goes much deeper than that. Carreño Busta has never had all that much success on the clay, and he just had his most successful clay court season by far, which indicates that when he moves to his favorite tournament, the US Open, where he's twice a semifinalist, he's going to be feeling even better about himself than he ever has before when he hits the hard courts in New York. He got destroyed by Medvedev, and Medvedev was just off the charts in that match. But, other than that, I think PCB has been very convincing. And then Khachanov, ever since Wimbledon, has been impressive. And these are two guys who are very physical, and that's what the US Open is about. It's tough. Best of 5 sets, hard court, end of the season. Everybody's banged up. It's hot. It's humid. You're looking for tough and physical players, and those two are right up there. Unseeded, I think Kei Nishikori is probably someone who is worth paying attention to because he is playing better and better and better, and this is possibly his best tournament, the US Open, and he's another person who I really like when it comes to obviously being a marathon man and having a tremendous record in deciding sets and training in Florida, which means he's so good in the hot and the humid conditions. And again, just playing better and better. So Nishikori is someone to watch, and Opelka will be another unseeded player who I think will be very dangerous. It's the first time that he comes into the US Open with as a real threat, and I'm wondering how will he handle and embrace the crowds, because it'll be the first time that I really watch Opelka with the pressure of the US Open, which someone like John Isner, it took him a while to get used to, and we'll see how Opelka does with that.
Yeah, that'd be intriguing. And actually, I guess on the Opelka situation, in terms of the Americans going into it, apart from Opelka, what are people looking out for in terms of good results? I'm assuming, obviously, we're looking at your quarters. I mean, his TFO, given that he's had a couple of good results as well. McDonald as well, played pretty well.
Yeah.
What are the what's kind of the feeling in the US in terms of expectations?
I think a man will make a run. I just think it comes down to math. It's like when but players who could make a quarterfinal, right? Mackey, Sebastian Korda, Jensen Brooksby could do it. I mean, he is winning and winning and winning. And then Tiafoe and Isner and Opelka. Look, are any of them likely to make a quarterfinal? No, none of them are. But there are 6 of them. So I think that one of them will make a run. So that should be exciting.
The law of averages.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, I don't. Yeah, it's exciting though. Exciting. In terms of a breakthrough player, this is quite a hard one to answer, but in terms of a younger player, who do you see potentially being able to break through at the Grand Slam?
Well, look, Alcaraz has been very impressive at every
Mm.
stage of his career, and eventually he is going to, I mean, look, even the fact that I think he played in Australia, and I think he played, I think he's played all 3 slams this year, actually, now that I
Yeah, I
think
think
about
he
it.
has. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's won a couple matches. I know he won in Australia. I know he won in Paris as well, and then I think he looked pretty good at Wimbledon. But if my memory serves, he lost that first round match. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think
He came against Medvedev, I think. I
right,
think it was.
right,
Yeah, in the
yes,
first round. Yeah.
and I thought he, I think he played fine. He doesn't have the
He did.
serve
Yeah.
yet. Um, so it would have to be Alcaraz if I'm looking at a young guy. I think Brooksby is in there though, and Brooksby, I just mentioned how I'm interested to see how Opelka will deal with the crowd. I know Brooksby will embrace the heck out of it. That is what he does. So that's someone who I will be in New York. I do not want to miss his first round match, Jensen Brooksby.
Hmm. And before I ask about your winner, of course, I need to ask you about the one of the Brits anyway, which is, of course, Andy Murray. We can't do a chat without talking about Andy Murray. And I just want you to reassure me that he's going to make the quarterfinals of the US Open. So over to you, Gill.
No,
No.
I still want Murray to try some new things. If
Mm,
he doesn't, it's all fine and well. But the way he's playing right now, I think he's gonna be. I think he won't be a top 30 player the way he's playing right now. I think he needs to change his style, and I think he has the talent and the skill to do it, but he needs to decide to do it. I'm not sure if he will or not.
mm,
I think he needs to go after his first
yeah,
serve a little bit more. Or excuse me, actually his second serve. We spoke about that. I think he needs to go after his
yeah.
second serve more than he is. I think he needs to go after his forehand more.
Mm,
Um, and then, if he does that, then I think he can reinvent himself, go to net more. But until then, I just don't think he's fast enough right now
yeah.
to be a top player with the way he's playing.
Yeah, no, I agreed. I think against Gasquet, we saw kind of little glimpses of this slightly more aggressive version of Murray that we could
But
potentially
here's
see.
but the
Yeah, go
thing
on.
is with Gasquet is he's like Andy. He doesn't want to do anything
That's
either.
true.
So Andy
Yeah.
was like, okay, well, let me do something. But
Yeah.
against, and I mean do something as an offensively,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
against the more aggressive players, that is the test where,
Yeah.
okay, Andy, are you going to? It's one thing doing it against Gasquet, but if you
Mm,
play Denis Shapovalov again, are you going to still kind of rely on your defensive instincts, or are you going to kind of flip the script and really take some chances?
no, agreed. Agreed. That'd be wow. What a day it would be, right? When you see Murray just hitting winners left, right, and center, and he's playing like Denis Shapovalov. Oh, crazy! And in terms of, we've got to finish off, and then of course on your winner for the US Open. I'm kind of guessing. I know you're going to go with, but give me the winner and why.
Well, look, I'm still mulling with Novak Djokovic. It's not a sure pick
Mm,
for me, and I'll explain why. It's been a very long time since I've picked him off of besides the French, where I've picked Nadal the last couple of years. I'm on a long streak of picking Novak. I think the amount of pressure that's on him though at this tournament is immense, and will be really difficult for him to combat. I think the Nadal and Federer not being there, that hurts him. I really do. I think all the eyes will begin to really focus on him. I think if Nadal and Federer were there to just take a little bit of attention off him, I think that would help. Um, Ultimately, we kind of saw at Wimbledon how in both the semifinal and the final,
mm,
how the pressure. Djokovic is human. He's not a robot. The pressure
yeah.
can affect him, and he's so good at managing it and dealing with it, which we spoke about after Wimbledon. Um, but Berrettini and Shapovalov, that's one thing at Wimbledon. I think if he plays Medvedev, Zverev, or Tsitsipas at the U.S. Open and he's dealing with the same kind of stress levels, that's going to be a whole nother thing. It's a higher level that they can bring and that they can challenge Novak with. And I think Medvedev or Djokovic will certainly be my pick, but it's just going to be a matter of how much the pressure might affect Novak and what he can do. Because, we saw in Australia that, if Djokovic is in his absolute flowing and A+ state, he can do kind of whatever he wants with the ball on so many levels, and can really just wear down Medvedev and neutralize his serve completely. But again, I think if he's not flowing off the ground, if he's playing the kind of level that he played at Wimbledon, it's going to be harder for him to win the U.S. Open that way. And I think the pressure is unlike anything I've ever seen since Serena was going for the Grand Slam at the U.S. Open, and she lost to Roberta Vinci in the semifinals. This is a very difficult thing. It's not going to be easy for Novak.
I agree. I think it's going to be his toughest test yet, despite the weakened field with no Federer, Nadal, and Thiem as well. So
yeah,
I 100% agree with you. I think it's not going to be the opposition. It's going to be, is he going to lose to himself in terms of getting inside his own head and potentially, which barely ever happens with Novak Djokovic, he said, because he's so mentally strong. But is he going to get to a stage where he just almost self-implodes mentally because it's just too much on him, and all eyes will be on him because he will be the guy going into it on 20 slams, and he will be the only person who has the opportunity to get in front for the first time ever as well. It won't be people doing presses with Nadal and Federer. It'll be just him. Everyone wants a piece of him, and I think it's going to be crazy. And I think the more logical thing is what you said, is that he could potentially trip up against one of Medvedev, Tsitsipas, Zverev. I actually think that there is a scenario, and it's a bit left field, that I feel like if he gets to the second week, the pressure will build. But I just feel like if he gets past the quarterfinal stage, I think he'll win. So I think if he makes the semis onwards, I think he wins. I think if he loses, it's going to be before then. I feel like it could be a very weird opponent. Like, it will be someone who you just don't expect him to lose to, and it might just be because he's come into it pretty cold given the lack of match practice, etc., and someone who's just had a absolute blinder. We're talking about the Soderling versus Nadal at the French Open kind of upset, and I don't know, that's just kind of how I'm seeing it. And I feel like if it is going to happen, that's going to be what is going to happen. But we shall see. It's very, very intriguing for sure. And my dark horse, which I always go for, I don't know why, but it's going to be Andrey Rublev again, which I think I said it for Wimbledon actually. But I wouldn't have said him actually if he hadn't had this little run at Cincinnati. I know, as you said, Medvedev is not 100% maybe, but I just feel like he has to click at some point. And I just feel like maybe this is a time for him to make even a semi of a Grand Slam would be good. Thank you very much, Gill. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know you need to go as well, so really do appreciate you being on. Thank you, as always, for giving me your precious time. Do check out Gill on Monday Match Analysis, Gill Gross on YouTube, on Twitter, and of course, A Tennis podcast on the Tennis Channel. Gill, any last words?
Nope. Let's just enjoy the tournament. Thank you, as always, for having me on, Faizan, and always have a lot of fun here on Quality Shot.
Thank you, Gill. Thanks, everyone. Stay safe and well. Thank you very much.